All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome to Sankofa Video Books and Cafe. I'm Christina Joy, the events coordinator here. We have been open since 1997, right across the street from the illustrious Howard University, HU.
You know.
Okay, that was a little weak, but it's okay. I know it's like, what, second week of class, third? We getting started now. So tonight we have two lovely sisters in the house, two lovely poets. Alexa Patrick right here on my right. Give it up for Alexa Patrick. And Diamond Sharp right here on my left. Beautiful sisters right here, like, oh, the melanin, like, they're doing the most right now. I'm just giving. So Alexa Patrick is a vocalist, and a poet from Connecticut. Okay, tri-state. She's the author of Remedies for Disappearing, this book right behind me. And Alexa holds fellowships from the Cave Canem, the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, and more. In spring 2023, Alexa made her stage production debut as unsung in the opera We Shall Not Be Moved. Okay, girl! Directed by Tony and Kennedy Center Honors awardee Bill T. Jones. Visit alexapatrick.com for more, okay? Diamond Sharp, this lovely sister in the red and pink right here. I'm like, this is a look, sis. Like, you do it. Is a poet and writer from Chicago. Okay, we love Chicago. Chicago be writing. Chicago writing. And she's the author of Super Sad Black Girl. And I hope you're not super sad tonight, sis, because you was doing it in this track. And without further ado, please welcome Alexa and Diamond to our store.
All right, hey everyone. So let me tell you how this gonna go. Diamond's gonna read poems from her beautiful book. I'm gonna read some poems, and then we're gonna engage in a little discussion. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, well, I'll get started. So it's funny that I'm here reading this because a lot of these poems, or like this book, I wrote some of the earliest poems when I was living in DC. So like this book has been like 10 years in the making. So yeah, some of the earliest poems from like 2013 or 2014, I was still living here. So it's like good to be back and reading them here. So yes, my book is called Super Sad Black Girl. I am currently not super sad, but I was. And the poems are a little sad, but you knew that because of the title. So if anyone else has depression, this is for you. Okay, so Super Sad Black Girl. When I'm tired, I bare my bones, swallow my own hair, recover from my thoughts, drown, tweak, have a fit of human, eat myself whole, bleed freely, suffocate gleefully, drown, bury this dust, amputate my body, abandon my mind, cry in public, want my ugly, choke, drown, tell the truth, fall, bleed black, swim in my own blood, stay free, wander, feel entitled, stay black, and die. So, in addition to writing about being sad, a lot of this book are kind of like odes to Chicago, like hometown heroes. So Lorraine Hansberry pops up a lot. Ronald Brooks is in here. Margaret Walker. I think that Lorraine Hansberry is like a fascinating historical figure. I think she did a lot in a very short amount of time. And she really was ahead of her time too. And it's funny that like about 2 years ago, one of her family members reached out to me, like they read this poem, I think, or one of the other poems in the Black Girl Magic collection. And it's just a reminder, right, that like the people that we see as historical figures are these like Black cultural giants, right? They're real people who have families, who love them, right? And for those who pass on, who miss them, right? So I think it's something to like keep in mind. So, Lorraine and Claudette. Lorraine, I asked you over for a dinner party. Gwendolyn and Margaret are here too, but I'm shooting the shit with you in the corner. What's it like dying young? Having your husband sit shiver for you? Miss Hansberry, what happens to Black girls like us? Do we crust and sugar over our heavy loads? I'm asking you, Lorraine. Tell me about the other side. Do Black girls like us get free? It must be nice over there. Like Chicago with her broken nose, not easy to love but necessary. In the purgatory rooms, are Black girls sipping Moscato? I hope so. Tell me what you want, Lorraine. I'll bring the blacks in a bottle of Penny. Yeah, can't win them all. Yeah, can't win them all. Okay. Exile. Lorraine and I are sitting in her old apartment in the village, two Chicagoans in exile. She's smoking a black while I cradle a glass of Henny. Where can we go be Black, Miss Hansberry? The other side, Mars. I've been thinking about leaving. It's the only place for Black girls between the purgatory room and the edge of this universe. Lorraine takes a long drag and ashes her cigar. Me and Lorraine are in the village, sitting in her kitchen. I say, I've been thinking about leaving. I've thought about eating myself whole. Maybe Black girls get free on the other side, Miss Hansberry. She lights another black and takes a long drag, and she says, Black girls don't get free. Me and Lorraine are walking through Washington Park by the pond. Lorraine takes a long drag. I'm a freshly lit black. And she says, Black girls have always been free. We're from the future. One last thing I'll say about Lorraine, which is like a very like woo-woo thing. And so like after I started writing about her, she kind of started popping up too. Like I was at home, I like had got like an Airbnb to like finish writing some stuff. And then it turned out that my Airbnb was around the corner from her childhood home, like the famed home that like her father went to court over to fight about the essentially the segregation in Chicago. And then I was in New York for like on a business trip, like I was like there interviewing for a job. And it just turned out that my hotel was like around the corner from her home in the village. So yeah, she like kept popping up. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I was like, okay, like when you start writing about people, they just kind of start popping up. I think I'll do two more. Purgatory room. It's me, Sandra, and Rakia in the back of the purgatory room. I snuck in a bag of Vintner's crunchy curls, and our fingertips are covered in dusty red film. Rakia says she doesn't remember the last time she shot the shit like this. Everything is fuzzy. Her ears are still ringing from the buckshot. Sandra says this is the first fun she's had in this place. Me, Rakia, and Sandra are in the back of the purgatory room, and this shit is getting boring. They serve Moscato here, and I grab 3 glasses. We are Chicago girls. We'll be damned if we don't save ourselves. Sandra says her neck still hurts, and it's hard to swallow. Her hands have been bloody since the day she came. Rakia says she has trouble remembering anything before the bullet. I'm eating chips drizzled in Louisiana hot sauce. The only thing that's good about this place is the snacks. Rakia says that the chips are the last thing she ate before it all went dark. She and her friends were in the alley shooting the shit and a shot. Then her head started hurting. Sandra says she wants to play spades to pass the time. I don't know how to play. She invites some guys from the other side of the room. They're from Chicago too. I'll read one last one. The Golden Shovel. Gwendolyn and I meet for drinks at the Golden Shovel. The 7 are here and they are shooting the shit and shooting pool in the back. She tells me that the best company are the dead. They are quiet, agreeable, and make no trouble.
Ooh, thank you so much. That's beautiful. It's so funny, as I was reading through your book today, there are a lot of poems that I felt very connected to, and I was like, oh, we have like, our work is in conversation. Our work is like playing patty cake somewhere in like a cafeteria, I think. Okay, cool. Hi, my name's Alexa. It's good to see you all. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for being patient. And then we started a little late. Hello, people out in the internet world. So I'm just gonna dive in. This first piece is called Vigilante. It is a piece that I wrote after a mentor challenged me to write an angry poem. In the war against me, I am the fortress, cold, standing, around me a moat that is also me, running circles and licking dirt, cannons spitting from the roof, black as me, exploding like me, clapping through the air. In the war, the knights are me and the knights are me, riding their strong, tired horses, whose hooves arpeggio the mud, creating a song that is me. My dance card is full. Soldiers keep coming to offer their gentle hands. Men who live in my building, whose daughter went to my school, whose daughter I am, who are 20 years my senior, who aren't men yet, who have signed my checks, who against metro stations line themselves like artillery and whistle clean as exit wounds. Of course my humanity has hollowed. Mercy burned down with all the other small towns. The smoke, yeah, that's me too. I really like the word vigilante. It has a kind of ancestral feel to me because I come from a very long line of fierce, biting women, 6 of whom were my great aunts, who were like very pretty and very dainty, but also were like kind of scary and would like cut you if they needed to. And so we called them the vigilante aunties. This poem is for them. It's called Sugar. Gathered like sunflowers at the breakfast table, 6 sisters share a midnight. Wash down 7-Up cake with the kind of laughter reminding you they are in the choir. Bells in their throats like hallelujah, the sweetest thing. This before their hands cracked from prayer and spanking babies, when they pinch blood into their cheeks. Fix the lipstick, gracefully announcing the small mole they all kept at the corner of their mouths, so pretty, even their sharpest words were frosted. I come from sugar, the way a hymn comes from grief or praise. I have so many ways to return. Grease my scalp with the same oil I use for pans and find myself in a Pittsburgh kitchen. Forget everyone's name and weep because I love them. Dream of pistols under pillows. Wake up bitter about husbands I don't yet have every morning, a manicured finger pointing home. Grandma Jerry went first, winked at my mother from the casket. Aunt Willa passed on her 102nd birthday, y'all. They all know how to make an exit, make us mourn in confection. Grace, not dead, but heirlooms like beauty mark or recipe there even in the cavities left behind. Their stories coat my teeth until I too am beside them, never alone or lost, just alive with their names trailing like crumbs to God. know they're all like watching over me sick, being like, why is she telling all my business like that? Girl. I'm gonna keep doing it too. So, because they're wild. Okay, which I think is gonna help me get to my next poem here. Ooh, here's one. You all know who Joe Morton is, right? He played the daddy on Scandal, but he was like, yeah, okay. Even in the back with their salads, they're like, yeah, girl, we know. Okay, cool. So, this poem is called One Time the Aunties Made Lamb for Joe Morton. A true story. Yeah, it was cooking. After the play, the sisters swarmed him like flies to melting candy or mushrooms to wet earth, flashing their frills. And he didn't mind because the metronome of their heels made any man forget his long days staining his collar and remember the wide chest beneath. And the sisters were all walking eyelashes. If the color pink could sing, decorated demands and lace before he even noticed that he was exactly where they wanted, sitting and hungry, husbands off somewhere in their Saturday cigar, leather thick basement where they loosen ties and tongues, expect wives to wait, obey. But obedience was for the homely girls. And not the six of them leaning into this handsome celebrity like stems in a tall glass before they had to return to the quiet business of Sunday. They smiled, purled in a twang that too knew the Bible by heart. Baby, what's your favorite meal? I think I'm gonna keep reading poems that I have yet to read yet. I've been touring this book, and so I've been reading a lot of the same poems over and over, but there are some poems that I'm like, I feel myself not touching, and so I want to challenge that a bit. So is it okay if I continue to read things that are a little, oh, okay, thank you. Thanks, Diamond's brother. Okay, this piece is called Betty. We took the annual Pittsburgh procession down for a visit. Our matching purple shirts made us bruises, bright and bringing new drama to the hospice where Betty's life tapered like linen. We'd pour our August gospel into the rec room, half circled at the center where the nurse rolled her in, the skin of her face thin as lace, through which her gray eyes asked their cool questions. Aunt Betty, once loud as her sisters, now called their names without speaking, wept at all these faces of hers, knocking like neighbors from past lives, holding her fragile hands, their bent scripture of bone, to kiss into them a safe passage. And I, who never heard her voice, who only met her through my mother's stories, was too afraid to join in the hymn the rest of my family sung, and wondered where all her noise went. Okay, that was a lot of family poems. Let's travel a bit. So I'm from Connecticut, tri-state, gang gang. I heard an A in the back. Connecticut too? It's always New York. It's always New Jersey. What about Connecticut? Metro North. Okay, cool. So it was hard. It was hard. I was one of very few Black kids in my school of 1,200. So a lot of the poems in this book are about Black girlhood, specifically in predominantly white spaces and specifically high school. This piece is called The First Boy to Call Me Beautiful. The first boy to call me beautiful had hair like a kinked fist, walked down the hallway, radius of curl, beckoning white hands he'd allow. And I'd watch a little light in him dim. This, a language us onlys have, where no words need exist at all. Survival, head nod. Mitchell was his name. He came to our town escaping a poor Harlem corner, moved in with a white family, started playing lacrosse. Think The Fresh Prince meets The Blind Side meets other stories of brown boys who could never fit. This while I convinced myself to like salad just for the Abercrombie jeans hanging in my closet, push straight hair over sodium hydroxide scabs, the need to fit louder than the burn crawling up my neck. Most times, his friends, no-lip white boys, spit in my direction, then message me to ask what my mouth might do, knowing they'd pass me in hallways later, laughing, laughing, laughing. Imagine my joy, looking down to see his name lighting the phone, a new tone ringing as blood pushed and softened the black of my cheeks. You're beautiful, from the only boy who might understand what those words mean. But don't tell anyone I said that, okay? You and your tentative snaps. You're like, oh wait, he sucks. Yeah, he does. In case he's watching the Sankofa Live. Okay. One of the things that I did when I wrote this book is I interviewed a few of the other, emphasis on a few of the other Black girls who went to high school with me, about their prom experiences. Because prom is such like an interesting, like youth, teenage rite of passage. There are a lot of things converging at the same time because you're like on the precipice of adulthood kind of, but then also, you know, you want to be beautiful. There's like a romance involved with it. There's a kind of validation that you get when someone asks you to go and also asks you to go in like a grand way. And so what does an event like that mean for a Black girl who, especially in that space, is not seen really at all? So I interviewed them about their experiences, and then I created erasure poems from those experiences to create new pieces. I'll read one. The first one I'll read is called Aisha. At senior prom, my date was unseasoned food. And this one's called Zoe Eats a Man. Sorry is dominant. It hook anything it claimed to grow. A mean jungle with Black girl less than John Smith. I crush him and he a hole of hurt. A kind of sorry I can use. Let me note publicly, I'm the idea of being desired. Object treated as sex. They wanted me hidden like a body with fire. What hurt me was never human, just abuse translated to a bed. I realize that you can use anything if you kill it. Cool, thank you. How we feeling? We good? Good. Yeah? You've been getting the heavy poems today. Yeah. Okay. I think one last high school poem, and then I'll see if I can do a couple others to bridge the gap so we can have a little conversation. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. As like a spoken word performer, first, like when people don't respond to me, I'm like, they hate me. Awesome, I'm fine. This piece is called the Guilford Fair 2008. The Guilford Fair is like one of those big fairs that happen in your like small town, and then that's where like the kids would go and like smuggle liquor in plastic bottles and stuff. Yeah, cool. The Guilford Fair 2008. I arrived suffocated. Tight denim miniskirt, marooned skin to September, thighs goosebump, begging as neon lights gave body glitter a reason. Want was a joke we were all learning to tell. Emergency vehicles parked so kids could play in them, cherry-stained and waving violent fingers, while underclassmen found real danger, hid behind artisan tents, muddied themselves with liquor smuggled in Gatorade bottles. And I watched like a hallway anticipating Monday's rumors, a spectator against which poor decisions bounced. I held them all, not envious, but full of stories. Never mind. Jackie, my ride home, walked into the woods to make out with her third boy. I waited, stuffing cotton candy in my mouth, till the blue dug a grave in my molar. They was smooching, I was eating candy, getting cavities. Okay, cool. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm going to end with this one. This one I haven't read before at all, so I'm a little nervous about it, but we're going to see how it goes. There is a... I was really interested in looking at critical missing posters when writing this book. I was particularly interested in... do you remember, I think it was like in 2014, when there was this like news article where they were like, there are 200 Black girls missing right now in DC. But then as it came out where she's like, okay, well, you know, some of them were runaways and then some of them have actually been found, then the conversation that we actually need to be having about like why we're not talking about missing Black girls and why Black girls are running away, that conversation that we need to have stopped and didn't really happen at all. And so I looked at like the form of critical missing posters and I decided to create a poem in the form of a critical missing poster. So in this one poem, each like, there are like many poems in there that are all titled after the sections of a critical missing poster. Yeah. So this is called Critical Missing 1. Name, Sienna. She pins it to her chest like a brooch worn to some fancy mayoral dinner and not the gray high school where she was seen. Sorry, let me start again. Name for Sienna. She pins it to her chest like a brooch worn to some fancy mayoral dinner and not the gray high school where she was last seen by her girls. Those girls who'd call cross halls, savoring the holiness of her name as if speaking in tongues, waiting for her arrival, her gallop, all limbs, this gangly 14-year-old Messiah. Maybe they called her Sea, 'cause she erodes mountains to sand with a smile, the loudest, softest thing. See? Praise her ember eyes, their angry marvel at a shape-shifting city, shedding skin with each teenage year, or maybe they call her Anna, an abbreviated Hosanna, the way all missing Black girls are. Missing from. What is home to a snake that tires even of its own skin? I'd say I was taken from home, but home hasn't claimed me since it stopped going by Chocolate City. It don't sound alarms for me no more. Don't even look, just hiss. It just hiss. Tell me go twice, like it means it. Last scene. On this southwest block, decay crowds air with smoke while men who'd squeeze my cheeks when I was little lick their lips as I walk by, sprout wings and sing love songs through glassy eyes. I learned to keep my head down since turning 11. I'm 14. Last seen, you ask? Only my shadow would know. Time. The sun bled everywhere. I darkened into the shadow of a poplar. It was 1929. I became a widow. It was 1960. The bus hum mothered me and soothed the calluses on my prayers. It was 1985. Church bells wept around us, pallbearers ushering in a white-gloved grief. The sun beat us as we all stripped and leapt into the river. It was noon. The cool, wet grass greeted us as we ran through midnight. Yesterday, offering tomorrow its hand, and I danced barefoot for the last. Contact. So many ways to lose a daughter, and the hurt be an empty room. Contact. So many ways to lose a daughter, and the hurt of an empty room be a mother itself. A womb haunted by fruit punch lip smackers, Big Sean posters, things her only loved thing loved, where her only loved thing rested her head. What rest does a mother's head have? She still picks up strawberry Pop-Tarts just in case. Ends every conversation with, "Call me if you see her." Description of the incident, which is an erasure of an actual critical missing poster. Metropolitan Public March. A Black female was last seen. Thank you, everyone. Chill. Poems. Hi, Diamond.
Now I feel weird because it's kind of.
Yeah, do we want to do like a passing back and forth thing?
I think we may have to.
Okay, we can do that. I'm thinking that maybe we can ask each other one question, and then we can open it up to the audience if y'all are interested. Yeah? Okay. So my question for you is, I'm curious about what surprised you in the writing of your book. Like as you're writing this book of your Super Sad Black Girl, was there anything that surprised you as you were kind of discovering these poems of yours?
Oh, that's interesting. I think a few things. One, later on, because someone asked me this, because like Purgatory, where there's poems called Purgatory Room, like that imagery kept coming up. And I'm not religious, but like my family is Catholic, and I don't think of myself as particularly influenced by religion. But then I was like, oh, I did kind of write a book that has that theme of purgatory throughout it. And then also to me, like obviously the Catholic Church is not the first organization to come up with the concept of like a liminal space in which humans may find some type of meaning or get to the next side, wherever that may be, right? That concept, I'm sure you can find that in much older religious ideas, right? Like this is probably as old as humans are, right, in some ways. But to me, it's such an idea that makes sense, right? Like, of course, humans would like imagine a space in which they could have like another chance to like rethink what should I do next, or like how might I get to whatever the other side is, or like how can I make myself ready for that. So it's interesting places to play in, right? In terms of literary, like the imagination kind of can run wild in that space. So that was like one thing. Again, because someone asked me, they were like, "Oh, is your family Catholic?" I was like, "Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about that influence there." And then the other thing too is that, so I think as I mentioned earlier, right, like I started writing these poems in 2013. It is now 2023, right, as a decade. And as everyone knows, right, a lot can change in a decade. Right, like who I was in 2013, I was 24, and now I'm 34. Like, those are two different women. I'm not even sure how much like 24-year-old me would like recognize me. Right, I think that's probably what everyone wants, right? You don't want to be, 2 years later, you kind of want to be able to look back and be like, I made some changes, right? You kind of like, you don't want to be who you were 10 years ago, like
You're
that.
24, you being like, oh, there she go. I know exactly.
Yeah, like you don't want to be in that situation. So not to like answer this question in a long way, but yeah, that was like a learning practice,
Wow.
right? To be like, I think a lot of people know that books take a long time, and right, and often the author is past whatever event or catalysts spark them to write whatever book you are reading. Right? For me, I was like, wow, like this was a part of my life that kind of from 2013 until I graduated from my MFA program in 2017. That was like working and thinking through these poems, and then when I sold this book to Haymarket, we shared this in the press. Right, I kind of me in 2020 and 2021 had to kind of go back and where was I in this space when I was writing this? Like in order to flesh it out, right, I had to think back to like, well, how did I feel at 24, 25, 26, 27? And I'm doing this as a 30-year-old, right, 31, 32. And that is like an interesting exercise. You have to think back to your past self and make some creative decisions for that person. It's interesting.
Do you think that made it, I wonder, this might be annoying. Let's see. If it annoys me, then I'll just speak out.
Testing. Hello.
It's a little
It's a little annoying.
Yeah.
It's annoying. God said. Okay. Do you think that made it easier or more difficult for you to like write and edit? Because I could imagine where with space and with time, it might help you edit because you have a little bit of distance from these actual poems, or I could see where it would make it really difficult because then you have to put yourself in the place of your 24-year-old self.
Right. So I think to answer your question is a bit of both, right? Obviously, my material is quite dark, right? Like it's like kind of funny, like dark in a ha-ha way, but I'm talking about like suicide, suicidal ideations, and what it means to have depression. I live with bipolar disorder and various other neurodivergent issues, right? That I slowly kind of discovered at the beginning of writing this book up until recently, right? So like that's a long process. Again, it's not unusual for people to experience mental health crises in their early 20s. And you hope that if you make it to your 30s, a lot of people do not for various reasons. A lot of people who experience mental health crises in their early 20s, unfortunately, do not live to see their 30s for all types of societal reasons and otherwise, right? We don't have a society that's set up to help people do that. And so, again, to answer your question in a more succinct way, it's a bit of both, right? Because, yes, in theory, you have the gift of being able to look at this from a different viewpoint. You're years removed from it, but also I'm dealing with very dark material. And so I had to say, like, damn, I was really depressed. Like, like I still deal with depression, but I was like, damn, that was bad, right? And I think that's kind of hard to deal with. You're like, wow, like I was like still functioning. I wrote these poems, clearly, but I was depressed. So it's a bit of both. So I was curious about the opening, the graph. Yes.
I know that because log wants to be in there, but it's like, no, it's epigraph.
Yeah, I was curious about the choices there. You can read them for folks who maybe don't.
Yeah. All right, there are two. If I can find them. Here they are. So the first one is from Big L.
Big L. You can't kill me, I was born dead. And then the second one's from Big Frida, who said, we dance at funerals, we got this. One of the things that I love about Blackness is that a lot of our art circles around the idea of like, we dead, but we not though, you know? We are constantly like muddying and graying the space between life and death. And we're constantly in conversation with our dead. Like even as I was reading your poems, like you're in conversation with the dead. And using that as a kind of portal and as a kind of like access point for a survival, for life. And so, yeah, I think that there's power there. Like when I look at Big L saying, you can't kill me, I was born dead. There's just like a mightiness to that. And especially now as someone who's not here with us anymore, it makes him feel ever present. And there's this, there's a solace that I take in that, where it's like, okay, like, there are things that might threaten to kill me. They can't kill me. Like, I'm large, I'm huge, I was born dead. I'm in conversation with the dead. So there's just something that was really just lovely about that, and especially for this entire like book, where I often pull my survival in this book. Like, one of my remedies in this book is speaking to the women who have passed in my family, the vigilante aunties in particular. So, like, as I'm a Black girl that's, navigating these predominantly white spaces and trying to see images of myself reflected in the world that I don't necessarily have access to, like, where can I go to see myself? Where can I go to, like, feel comfortable existing? Where can I go to feel excited about existing either? And sometimes that is to your history and to the dead. Yeah, and also just an aside before I get to Big Frida's quote. Oh shoot, I lost it. I lost it. But there's something, I'm probably gonna remember it again because it was something that you said. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that is something that I super relate to. But yeah, for Big Frida, we dance at funerals, we got this. So she had said this as just like a really quick line at some New Year's celebration that was being televised, like live. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Where again, there is a joy even in death. There is just like this persistent life even in the not being here. So it just, there are things that I think I needed to hear when I was going through the kind of gutter of my youth, and things that kind of stayed with me as I was writing these poems. Just reminders of survival and of like a lasting culture and a lasting self. Yeah, I'm so sorry that I lost that thought. No, I'm gonna like text you. It's gonna be like 3 a.m. I'm like, guess what? It's back. Okay. Yeah. Any questions from you all? Oh, are you pointing? Was that you pointing? Yeah, he was pointing at you. He was like.
Well, first, thank you so much for sharing these wonderful pieces. My heart is touched. I wanted to ask you about. Actually, this can go for both of you, but I was particularly touched by your sugar piece, and how, I guess, like, as you are writing, how you feel like you embody the women you come from in your families, and how writing is a way of, like, you talk about like a portal when you're writing and how you have access to it when you speak to them. So how are you using writing as a tool to navigate your portals?
That's a beautiful question. So the question was how do I use my writing as a tool to navigate portals? Like, how do I use it to connect with the women in my family, the women who have transitioned in my family? I think writing is the only tool that I really have to connect with them, especially because, fun fact, there are maybe 2 of those women who I actually met in person. And when I met them, I was, I don't know, 6, 5. So my memory of them isn't even, it's not necessarily a full memory. It's fuzzy and it's from the mind of a 5-year-old, which is still true, but it's not the same. So a lot of what I know of them, I know from the stories of my mother, or just stories from my family during like Thanksgiving or the family reunions. And then I get to play when I write, because then I get to fill in those gaps and imagine what their lives are. And in that practice, that is something that I feel very connected to. Like, I'm just like, you are, you're not just these little blips, these little stories. Like, you are a full person, you're a full human with a beautiful full life. And so I get to play with that, and I get to, in that imagination, then kind of live with them in the same moment. And so it's been really healing for me to do that, especially again as someone who did not grow up around a lot of Black girls, a lot of Black women. It was just like, it was my family. So I had my mother, but that was really it, and like my immediate vicinity. So yeah, it's just been a really beautiful healing practice. And I remember that was actually what I was going to mention for you, because imagination plays such a big part in your book as well, because like your book is like an imagination of what it might be to spend days with, or a day, or like an afternoon in the summer with these women who you probably never met. And so I'm really interested in this question for you too.
Well, first I wanted to say, right, what you're saying about like not meeting elders or ancestors, right, but like having the stories about them. I think that's something that is across the diaspora, right? I think in our families, wherever you are from, I think Black families tend to keep the dead alive. I think that's very much a part of our culture, right? Like I never met my great grandparents, but I feel like I know them because the stories are so vivid. I feel like so in my work, my book is a little less where I'm not necessarily writing about family, but I'm writing to again, like hometown heroes, right? Like if you are a Black child in the city of Chicago and you have any interest in writing or you like to read, it would be impossible to not be aware of Gwendolyn Brooks, right? Like she is in the water. My middle school was named after Brooks, right? Like it feels like that's in the water of the city. Lorraine too is in that water. It's like if you are a Black child and you like to read and write, have you heard of Lorraine Hansberry? Right, like that's part of it too. I think that's part of why I was interested. Like they are not my ancestors, right? But like I don't think I would be writing the way that I write without what they've done, right? And like again, in the importance of people being like, you need to read this work. This work is important, and it has shaped me. So I want to answer your question, but I recognize that my work is a bit different. I wasn't writing about women in my family, but I think, again, like the importance of like, ancestors, whether they're our own or community-wise, they play an important role.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if you are, like you said, like if you're a young Black kid who likes to write in Chicago, like there's still a kinship in that. There's still a kinship to, Lorraine and Gwendolyn, and like just based on what they were seeing, what they were speaking about, and then being able to build a bridge between, their writings and your life and your truth. Like there's still a kinship in that. And I also think that that's also a very Black thing, to be able to create, to have your fictive kin, to be able to create family that is beyond blood, and not use blood as a constraint for a family. Any other questions? Rashid.
Hello. Thank you all for being here, both of you. So, how can I phrase this question? So, if both of your books are in conversation with one another, what would be one thing that either of you think will come out of that conversation that would then be able to be told to, like, let's say, younger Black girls who might happen upon these books, happen upon some of the themes in these books?
Okay.
Save yourself. I think that's the theme. That seems to be the reoccurring theme that joins us together. The importance of saving yourself, whatever that looks like. Unless you kind of have to do it. You have to. In order to survive, you have to do the internal work to save yourself. Because very often no one else is coming.
Yeah, and I would add to that sometimes the people who are coming are people who have already been there. You know, like I think one of the things that helped save me was like actually looking at my history and looking at like where I actually come from, who was here before me, and just discovering that lineage and discovering how they survived. Like I come from a very long line of church ladies, essentially, from pastors' wives, and who have to put on a certain facade. But you know, like don't get it twisted. Like these were unruly women, like flirty, you know, like tricky and playful people. And like even as you're, one of the images that kept coming up in your poems is like taking a long drag, drinking Henny, like smoking a black, like these like kind of just like very like human pleasures of like, yeah, just like the kind of the everyday kind of grit of women and what they do to survive and how they commune with one another. And like that, even when you are alone, it's still yet to be discovered inside of you. Yeah.
It's funny, I don't smoke, nor do I really drink, which is different.
That was actually going to be one of the questions. I was like, okay, so. Yeah.
But that generation did, which is important. That generation, they were smoking and they were drinking often at the same time.
Mm-hmm. In tandem, if you will. Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Thank you. Also, like, to one of my favorite girl dads. I know, right? Any other questions?
Hi, I had a question for Diamond. I'm sure it'd be relevant to you too. When you first introduced yourself, you said you were not super sad anymore, and I really appreciate that. I think sometimes you write for release, but never want to put something out that has your family thinking like, you know, are you okay? So my question for you is, as you sort of overcome these things, does preparing for a book reading or reading your old things sort of put you back in that space, and how do you sort of overcome that?
Oh, it's funny though that you mentioned family, because my cousin did, like, when she came to Chicago, we went out and she was like, by the way, how are you?
Hey, girl.
Yeah. She was like, how are you feeling? I just thought that was funny because, yeah, like you're checking in on me. She was like, yeah, I read the book. It's really good. But like, are you doing okay? I was like, yes, it's okay. So you still, even with that, you have family who checks in. I think it's interesting. When I'm reading the book, I mostly feel okay. And to be honest with you, it's only the last poem in the book that I find hard to read. And if anyone has read the book, you may notice that poem kind of doesn't really fit that. And that is because I wrote it in 2020. As I was turning this book in, I wrote it during the pandemic. I had a classmate, a friend who died from COVID, and that just completely, I'm realizing, even if I'm talking to you now, it's hard to talk. It wrecked me. It was, the pandemic was terrible. I mean, I don't know how else to say that. And I think that that's the only poem that I find hard to read, which is why I didn't read it today, because as you can see, even now, thinking about it, it gets me upset. I feel very, very removed from the rest of the material. Maybe because it's about me, and I have a very, I think when you are dealing with mental illness, people respond to it in different ways, like in order to get through, right? I have a very I have a dark sense of humor, And so I'm kind of able to remove myself from it in order to survive, right? And so I'm able to kind of to answer your question, right? When I'm reading this work, and like it doesn't quite put me back in the same space, I'm able to look at it and say, this thing happened to me. I have survived it. I've written about it in the hopes that someone who has experienced it can also survive it. And can also maybe relate to it. And I think that again, the only poem that gets me like this is the last poem, because I think it's because it's not about me, it's about someone else.
Thank you.
I saw your hand was raised too.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for your vulnerability and like the intimate space that you curated today. I loved what you said about saving yourself, being the message that you would depart. But I was thinking about how often like a method of saving yourself, especially for younger Black girls in constricting spaces and situations, is like entering into like a type of performance of who you are and who you'd like to be. And I was wondering, like, in writing your books or in your general practice, like what are the ways that you move those barriers to entering into like a more like genuine, sincere, vulnerable part of yourself?
Wow, that's a
Fantastic. Which I was like, where are you coming for my life right now?
You should think about going into academia. You're good. You should be a professor.
Yeah, you should be the moderator. Shoot, listen to this table. Yeah, I think part of it is having a good group of writer friends to edit your work. I think that a lot of people, when they start writing, they have their little masks that pop up. And so it takes like trusted friends and trusted editors to be able to see when those masks are being put up and to ask the necessary questions. And so when I was writing this book, before I even knew I was writing this book, and I just had like a little collection of poems that I thought maybe would be a chapbook, I sent, the manuscript to maybe 5 or 6 people. Rashid is one of those people. And they asked me the necessary questions. Be like, this poem wrapped up a little too pretty for me. If you're writing, a piece about the Black boy in school who you really wanted to like you and he called you beautiful, like, are you just gonna leave it at him calling you beautiful, or are you gonna tell the entire story about how then he said, but don't tell anyone I said that, okay? Like, what is the full story? So having editors that are kind but also don't let you back away from yourself is really important.
I also think it's your disposition. Right? I imagine you are this way too. I'm never particularly precious about my work, whether it's poetry or I also work as a music journalist, and I work in media, so I'm often being edited. And I think you kind of have to have a good sense of like not taking things personally. And if you are, do you have an MFA? But you've been, yeah, I mean, fair. But you've been in workshops, right?
Yes.
Yes, as your bio would indicate, right? So anyone that's like been in any workshop space, or
slam.
Yeah, or that too, slam. Like, but I would argue that's a workshop space too. You're workshopping amongst your peers. I think that's very beneficial, and I know I had that early. I had that in high school, and I think you had that at least in college, early college at least, right? So I think that's important too. So I guess what I'm saying is that part of it is like, in order to do that correctly, I think it's part of like, yes, you have your friends who are telling you about yourself and will be honest reviewers, but also your own disposition. You can't really take your writing precious, like you can't be precious about it, because if you are, then you're not gonna be able to edit it, and then who the hell knows what you're going to publish. It probably be bad.
I would be. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that it's a good practice to continually try to take off the mask as you write, and to even like have that disposition that asks yourself that question: where are the masks coming up in my work? Yeah, I think maybe we have time for one last question before we dip out.
Just a quick question for you all. Given the visualizations of the works from a illustrative standpoint, you think about some of the wordplay. Have either of you all thought about your works being adapted for film in some sort of way?
Oh, that's interesting. You're the first person who has said this. Sure. I think that I also think in that manner, like what would this look like on screen? Like I think if I were to write a short, I probably would start with something like a poem from the book, or maybe some of the general themes that are there about portals, time. Like in my book, it's kind of clear that time is kind of circular. And like in one poem where I mentioned talking to Lorraine and Hansberry in the village, and then suddenly we're in Washington Park in Chicago. We're not close to each other, right? Like, so time, distance, and space kind of all follow each other. So yes, I guess I'm saying that I have thought what this might look like as a starting point to maybe some type of visual. Yeah, I don't think it's unusual.
Yeah, it's funny, when you first started the question, I thought you meant like in a gallery. Like I could see like this being like displayed in like a gallery, or having it be some type of visual art, especially with like the erasures or like the portraits of the women in my family. If it were like a film, it would have to be like a Beyonce Lemonade type situation. I don't know if I could see it as like an actual strung together film, but my goal, I really want to write a novel in verse, a YA novel in verse that I could, like my little idea for it, I could definitely see being a film or a short or something. I'm really excited about that. But yeah, y'all, thank you so much for being with us this evening. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Diamond, do you want to tell the folks where they can find you on the interwebs?
Don't find me. No, you can find me on Instagram at DJ Sharp. I'm still on Twitter, though. Twitter is dying a slow death. And there I'm Diamond in the E at the end of my name. Don't ask me why. And yeah, those places you can find me. I lurk on TikTok, so there's no use of telling you all my username. I am there. I'm just lurking.
Great. And you can find me on Instagram at Alexa Laurel. And then you can also find me on Twitter. I'm holding on for dear life because it's so funny. It's so funny. But at Get Free Alexa P. Yeah, and also if you are interested, if you don't already have copies of our books here, they are available for purchase at the front. We are here to sign them if you wish to have us sign them. But otherwise, again, just expressing gratitude for you all for being here this evening. It's been really fun. Thanks.